This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffmann, Brent Barnett, and Riley Smith. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffmann.
Well, good day and welcome to another edition of Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffmann. Today is Monday, April the 18th, 2022. Coming up on today's episode, Brent Barnett will have more information from President Biden's visit to Menlo last week, talking about infrastructure and what it's going to mean for rural America. I sit down with U.S. Soybean Export Council CEO Jim Sutter. We talk about the record year in 2021, and he looks ahead at soybean production in 2022. We'll also have a check of your ag weather outlook, but for right now, let's kick it off with a check of the markets. It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. Well, let's take a look at how the markets closed up from the trading day, and for that, we talked with Bill Biederman of agmarket.net. Bill, thanks for taking the time to visit with us.
No, it's always a pleasure, Dustin. Thank you.
All right, so Bill, what did we see coming out of the markets today? We had a good start on the overnight. Where did things shake out?
Yeah, so the market today was preparing. Last week, it was preparing for a holiday weekend trade and possibly seeing some field work get started this week. But we came into a week where we've got, a few feet of snow up in the Dakotas, a couple of inches of snow in Chicago where a lot of traders live, and a weather forecast that just doesn't look all that rosy. So the market immediately started to factor in weather. A little bit less precip also for the Western Plains, so that got the Kansas City wheat going. Soybean futures really blew the top off here with some inflation trade and some announcements on Friday that China bought more beans and moved some over from COFCO to foreign sales. So that was kind of a surprise to the market. So we just came in overall with an inflation and demand base much stronger than what we were anticipating, and then throw some weather on top, and we got a pretty strong day.
Well, now we talk a lot about weather, but we're also sitting here at the middle of April in the upper Midwest. That doesn't mean really that we're in a state of panic yet, but why does the market seem to be in one?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would have to say that because of the amount of press that commodities are getting, the potential of quote unquote food shortages, whether those are real or perceived, there is no food shortage until we get into this production year. And if we're not getting a good production cycle, then yes, there's going to be some food shortages. Obviously, there's going to be some regional food shortages in Europe. I'm reluctant to use that word shortage, but just out of shipping logistic issues with the war and everything. But reality is this, there's not going to be a food shortage unless we have a production cycle adversity in the coming year. Then, yes, blow the top off this thing. But Dustin, I don't think there's ever been a year where you've hit $8 corn at this time of year. We haven't even gotten into the weather market yet. So I really believe this is a lot of non-agricultural money coming into the markets to trade. And it's pushing the market a lot higher. Is that good or bad? I mean, if it cuts demand off at its knees and we see rationing and we have to buy that back at some point, that's not good for us. We're not seeing that happen just yet, though.
Now, what about the livestock side of things, Bill? I mean, we know that when higher grain prices happen that we usually see lower livestock prices. What's going on today?
Well, the numbers that we're going to be slaughtering down the road are going to be pretty tight. We've got lower cattle numbers. The hog numbers aren't going to be growing as much as what, we earlier thought. You've got the high price of grain and you got the drought. So, how do you trade that? Today, the high price of grain forced the feeder cattle market down almost $3, down $2.80. Cattle, on the other hand, were selling off. They tried to come back up, and then they ended up back down on their lows just because most people who see the feeder cattle market going down, they're going to sell out of their cattle too. So you got a little technical pressure on that. The reality is that, the way I'm looking at these numbers is that, if you've got people concerned about higher food prices, grains always go up first. After that, it's the meats. So I think these meats are going to have good support on breaks. These stores, if they can get this stuff bought $5, $6 on a pullback, they're going to do that to hedge in their needs and keep that shelf price as competitive as they can get it.
Of course, everybody is focused on what's happening in the Black Sea region there in Ukraine. Have there been any new developments there that have caused the markets to move one way or the other?
Well, I think the biggest thing has been, the effect that it might have on the crude oil market. And crude oil has been driving, when you're trading in an inflation environment, there's two things you trade. It's food and it's fuel, not always in that order. And so, the food industry people are watching the crude, and the crude people are watching the food people, and both of them are competing for higher prices as dollars move into those markets. But today, the market started out weak in the crude oil market. Talk of a possible Saudi Arabia increasing production, things like that. OPEC Plus talking about maybe increasing production. I don't think they will. And then all of a sudden, we get confirmation, or we get some, if you want to call it confirmation. I mean, the news is all over the place on this stuff, but the confirmation that the missile that hit the Russian missile, it wasn't just a fire on the battleship, it was a missile. So that increases the intensity of the whole thing, and that crude oil market takes off. So the crude right now is at a very high price, just like corn is. Could it go higher? I think it has more room on the upside than corn does at this point in time of the calendar year.
All right, Bill, well, you gave us a lot to think about there. And of course, some of our followers want to change their marketing strategy or maybe just upgrade what they have already got. How do they get in touch with the folks of agmarket.net?
Yeah, so the easiest way to do it is just to go to our website, which is agmarket.net, and you can just click on a link. If you go to Ag Market Intel, you can start looking at our research. You can sign up for a 2-week free trial. Actually, it's a 4-week free trial, so we just changed that. So it's a pretty good opportunity to see what we're doing.
Well, Bill, we thank you for the insight as always, and we look forward to talking with you again real soon.
You bet. Thank you.
That again was Bill Biederman of agmarket.net. Let's go ahead and take a look at those closing numbers, courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart. At the close, July corn was up 23 1/4 at 8.07 even. December new crop up 14 1/2 at 7.49 3/4. July beans up 28 at 16.93 1/4. November up 19 1/2 at 15.21 even. July soy meal up $4.60 at 4.60.30 per ton. Soy oil up $1.20 at 78.09. Chicago wheat up 24 1/4 at 11.28 3/4. Minneapolis wheat up 31 1/4 at 11.78. Kansas wheat up 31 3/4 at 11.89. July oats up 9 at 7.46 3/4. On the livestock side, June live cattle down 62 cents at 135.80. May feeders down $2.62 at 159.15. June lean hogs up $3.92 at 122.40. Pork cutouts up $2.52 at 127.60. Class 3 milk for April down 3 cents at 24.30. And that's been a check of your ag market recap. Coming up after this quick break from the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff, we'll hear from Brent Barnett as he brings us more information of President Biden's visit to Iowa last week, especially on infrastructure and what that means for rural America. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to AMPM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffmann. Last week, President Biden came to Menlo, Iowa, and the biggest news story that came out of that was his halting of the moratorium against E15 sales coming up this summer. But he was also there to talk about infrastructure and its effects on rural America. Brent Barnett has more.
Thanks, Dustin. During President Biden's visit to Iowa last week, he talked a lot about the bipartisan infrastructure law and how it's going to help rural Americans throughout the country.
Reducing costs for families also requires investing in infrastructure. My introducer is going to drive home 50 miles. I got to make sure of the thousands of bridges in this state and around the country that aren't safe. I hope you're not going over some of them. And that starts with roads and bridges. It really does. As Cindy's pointed out, Iowa has more bridges than any other state in the nation that are classified as structurally deficient. 4,500 are in poor condition. And here's the reason why Cindy's work in the infrastructure law was so important. About 2/3 of the bridges in need of repair in this country are considered off-system because they're not directly on the interstate highway system. And back in January, I was supposed to speak in Pittsburgh, which I did, at a steel mill. But on the way there, a bridge collapsed in the city. That's what most people don't realize. It's called the City of Bridges. There's more bridges in Pittsburgh than any other city in America. And that morning I got there, it collapsed. We went straight to the site. The bridge had been rated in poor condition for the last 10 years. Thank God nobody died. It was about, I'm guessing, maybe 300 yards across a little bit of a valley and a shallow creek. And the steepest part from the bridge to this creek was probably about 8 or 10 stories. And it was a snow day. And that bridge, if it weren't a snow day, would have had, at the moment it went down, school buses with hundreds of kids going across that bridge. This stuff matters. I mean, it really matters. I was telling Cindy I was in a small town in western Pennsylvania. And they needed a bridge. The bridge was only as far as from the length of, not half the length of this room. And guess what? The fire station was on one side and the town was on the other. But because they couldn't take the fire trucks across that bridge because they were afraid it would collapse, they had to go, if I'm not mistaken, either 10 or 11 miles, 5.5 miles up and 5.5 miles back to get there. And they had a fire, and they couldn't get there in time. Just across, they could see it. It was literally maybe 500 yards away, and they couldn't do anything about it. These bridges are essential for small towns in my state and yours towns and rural areas, for farmers to get their products to market, for small businesses to be able to serve their customers. These are bridges that, when they're closed, shifts off delivery and routes to schools and routes home. It takes a lot longer. They create longer delays for first responders when every second counts. And you all, Cindy can cite it for you, the statistics are. You get in an accident in a rural area, you have about a 40% greater chance of dying than you do if it happens in the city. It just simply takes longer to get to the hospital, longer to get to the dock. So in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we included $27.5 billion for smaller bridges, including dedicated funding for off-system bridges. And folks, look, we used to be rated the #1 infrastructure, had the #1 infrastructure in the world. We're now number 8, the United States of America. The United States of America. And folks, here in Iowa, our bipartisan infrastructure law is delivering $93 million for those bridges just this year. $93 million. And at least $14 million for off-system bridges this year. Look, this investment is going to help connect entire towns and regions and new opportunities. We've gone from waiting for Infrastructure Week, now you got infrastructure decade, 10 years. 10 years. And we owe it to you, Cindy. Look, it's going to help workers get jobs, good paying jobs, products get to market, reduce costs for families. With this investment, we're sending a message to America's small communities and the people who call you home, this home. You matter. You matter. We see you. Not a joke. And we're building back with you. We're making sure you're not left out or left behind. We're also investing in universal, affordable, high-speed internet. I was surprised at this number, I have to tell you. 16% of Iowa households don't have an internet subscription. In some places, there's no high-speed internet infrastructure at all. 0 in this state. And the law will make high-speed internet affordable and available everywhere in Iowa. And think of what that will make possible, from telemedicine to precision agriculture to small businesses that want to be able to sell in bigger markets. In the 21st century in America, No parent ever should have to pull into McDonald's or a fast food chain to literally hook up to the internet in their car so their kid could do their homework over on the line, online. Think about that. The United States of America. We're the guys that came up with all this stuff. Our infrastructure law invests in clean water and wastewater systems, including a major investment in the Lewis and Clark rural water system to bring clean, reliable drinking water to more than 350,000 people in South Dakota to Minnesota to northwest Iowa. It matters. It matters to the health, it matters to convenience, it matters across the board. We're investing in ports and waterways, including over $700 million for Lock and Dam Project 25 on the Mississippi. You say, what does that have to do with me? It has a lot to do with y'all. Because nearly every bushel of soybean and corn that is transported on that river from Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, Wisconsin, goes through these locks. And they were built in 1930s. Barges often need to be split into smaller groups to make it through, taking hours and sometimes greater delays. With new modern locks, we're going to help farmers get their products to market faster, more efficiently, lower cost, and keep American agriculture globally competitive. Folks, the list goes on. I'm starting to bore myself here, but this is important stuff. I think. In fact, members of my administration and I will be visiting rural America in over 25 states over the next 3 weeks to talk about how we can do even more to create jobs and opportunity, to make sure that the investments we're making reach rural communities, buy from rural businesses, create jobs here at home, giving your young people the opportunity to make a living and raise a family in the place where they were raised and where they want to stay.
Learn more about the president's visit to Iowa by visiting our website, iowaagnet.com. For the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, I'm Brent Barnett.
Thanks, Brent. Now let's take a look at your ag weather outlook. Well, after a brown Christmas last year, Mother Nature, in her infinite insanity, decided to give us a white Easter over the last weekend. Now, the snow really didn't stick, and the sun has returned for the most part today, but the temperatures tonight are going to be downright freezing. Let's take a look at what the National Weather Service says we're going to expect here in the next 24 hours. Looking at the ag weather outlook for the next 24 hours, we should see mostly sunny skies across much of the state today. It'll take a little longer for those clouds to push off of the northern and eastern parts. We'll see temperatures ranging anywhere from the low 40s to the low 50s. Now tonight, the clouds will roll away and we'll start to get some clear skies, but temperatures dipping down into the low to mid 20s across a big portion of the state. We could see temps closer to 30, though, off to the east. And then tomorrow, sunny skies will start out across much of the state, but the clouds will start to increase throughout the day. Could see some rain chances about the beginning of the afternoon hours in the west, and by the evening, we have a chance of rain across much of the state. Temps ranging from the low 40s to the low 50s. Taking a look at the IARN affiliate weather map for tomorrow, Cherokee expect those clouds starting to roll in throughout the day and a high of 43. Shenandoah should be partly cloudy with increasing clouds in the afternoon, a high of 50. Des Moines, the same thing. Could see those clouds increase as the afternoon goes on and a high of 50. Albia also seeing an increase of clouds throughout the day and 51. Waterloo will see partly cloudy skies and 50. Clinton will see partly cloudy skies and 52, but expect their clouds to start to roll in later on in the afternoon. For more detailed forecasts in your area, tune to your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. That's been a check of our Ag Weather Outlook. When we come back after this quick break, I sit down with Jim Sutter, CEO of the U.S. Soybean Export Council. This is Ag Matters PM.
As we approach planting season, make sure you stay safe and share the road with your local farmers. Slow-moving tractors with large planters occupy a lot of space on the road, so stay patient and follow at a distance of around 50 feet. You should never, ever try to pass them at a bridge, intersection, hill, or curve. It's far better than putting yourself or someone else at risk. So please, stay safe and remember to tip your hat to your local farmer this planting season. This message was brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
Welcome back to AMPM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffmann. Last year, we saw record exports for our soybean products. There are many factors and much hard work that went into achieving this record. We made this without even making record sales to our number one buyer, and that's China. And that's because we have a diversified approach to our soybean exports. I had the chance to catch up with U.S. Soybean Export Council CEO Jim Sutter at Commodity Classic, and this is what he had to say about where we're sitting going into 2022.
Absolutely. It was a record year, both in terms of value and volume, almost 75 million tons and $34 billion. And I know those numbers, they're hard to put in perspective for the average person, but it was the biggest export year of soybeans that we've ever seen. And what I really look at it and think about it, I'm so happy to see that we had a wide dispersion of solid performances. We didn't have record exports to our single largest market. China is our biggest market. We didn't set a new record there, but we set new records in several other countries. So we've been really focused on diversifying our markets and on making sure we had plenty of homes for U.S. soy around the world. And that's an everyday challenge and opportunity that we think about. So I was happy to see that happened. I also think if you start looking at this year's, the crop that we're about to plant, or the crop that we're let's talk about the crop that we're in the process of, that we harvested last fall and that we're exporting now. I think we're going to enjoy another strong export year. I don't know if it'll surpass last year's. We got a bit of a slow start. We didn't have many beans in stock when the first shipping season started. And then we had Hurricane Ida right here in New Orleans that slowed things down a little. But we're seeing unseasonably strong demand because of the problems that they're having in South America. So the U.S. cropping capacity really performed well last year. We thought Mother Nature might cause a few problems, but in the end we grew a record crop. And now I think there will be very solid demand for that in this marketing year. And then I'm quite optimistic again about exports for the next marketing year. I think the U.S. will continue to be called upon to be a strong supplier to the world.
Part of the situation we find ourselves in stems from the poor production coming out of South America during their last growing season. Sutter says that they're already seeing this become an advantage for us into 2022.
Well, I think it'll just create more demand for U.S. soy. And, the Brazilian crop was thought, and early on, everybody thinks you're going to have a huge crop. And with these, the prices are telling farmers to plant and produce. So we thought that South American farmers were going to plant a large area, and they did. And then they've had lack of rainfall, or in some cases, too much rainfall. Some parts of Brazil, it's a big country. But then in both Paraguay and Argentina, really disappointing moisture amounts. So their crop, at one point, I think we thought the South American crop would be about 220 million tons. That was our early on when you add all those countries together. Now it's more like 185 or something, I think, is the latest. There's a lot of different estimates floating around out there, and we'll see when it gets harvested. But significantly down, and those are big numbers. When you see those kind of changes, and of course we've seen market prices react to that. But to your question, I think that will spell strong demand for U.S. soy. And normally, our export pace slows down as we get into this time of year. As we get into the middle of March, South America's kind of come on to full swing, and we're exporting less, and they're exporting more. And we've all been watching the USDA sales reports and flash sales coming through, and we continue to see good sales of soybeans and products out of the U.S. USDA in the WASDE report reduced the carryout slightly, kind of reflecting that. So I expect we'll continue to see good demand.
We've all heard the rumors that there could be increased soybean production in the United States to take advantage of our current situation. But the USDA and several market analysts have said that if there is an uptick, it'll be a small percentage. Sutter says that he has talked with different farmers around the country and says that while he hears that there could be that increase, it may be due to just some plans that are already in place.
I certainly think there will be more acres. Significant, I talk to a lot of farmers. I'm very fortunate to have that opportunity. And most of them tell me that they're not going to make any big swings to their kind of cropping mix, that they've got a rotation that they've used year in year, and they like that rotation. I've talked to a few here that are saying, well, I'm going to I've got some land that I can shift, and I've been thinking about maybe I wanted to get a few more soybeans into my rotation. This is the year to do it. I've heard from others about, that maybe are in the input business, companies that are in the input business, talking about farmers that didn't have their fertilizer locked in, making a decision to plant more soy. So my guess is at the end of the day, we'll see soybean acres up a little bit. I don't think it'll be a huge change, but I think we could see them up a couple percent, 3% would be my guess, but I'm not an expert on that.
That again was Jim Sutter, CEO of the U.S. Soybean Export Council here on AMPM. We're going to cover more topics with him in the coming days and weeks. And just like that, we're at the end of today's episode of Ag Matters PM. We thank you for tuning in. You can find all of our content online at iowaagnet.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and find our videos and our previous episodes of Ag Matters PM through our YouTube channel. You can also sign up for our free twice daily market podcast through Amazon, Apple, Podbean, Spotify, and Google. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Hoffmann. For Riley Smith and Brent Barnett, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.